Our guest this hour is the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining, Andrew Kamau. Before we introduce him, today's proverb is a Malawian proverb. As a child is a man wrapped in his mother's womb. As an adult, in tradition, come death and he is wrapped in earth. As a child is a man wrapped in his mother's womb. As an adult, in tradition, come death and he is wrapped in earth. Wrapped throughout.
It's always something.
Wrapped throughout. That's the nature of life. Bona P.S., welcome to Kenya's Biggest Conversation.
Thanks, Eric.
It's good to have you. We call that the hot seat, and we love it when you have government on the hot seat because, you know, Kenyans, we have a very good relationship with our government, and so we like which one our government is answering our questions. It's good that you got here on time. You didn't have problems that others are facing this morning. That is not finding fuel at the petrol stations, and especially those who had traveled out of town over the weekend. And many have said that they have been unable to come back because of that, because they drove out and they cannot drive back to town. We have seen a number of statements that have been issued. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority on Saturday said there's sufficient supply in the country. Kenya Pipeline says they have sufficient supply in the depots. The oil marketing company is saying we are experiencing some challenges because of operating capital, and so on and so forth. But Bona P.S., the headlines today are basically just showing that there is some issue with fuel supply. What's the issue?
You know, Eric, you've seen what in the past what are called financial runs, where something spooks people.
Yep.
And they head out to their bank to get all their money. Yeah. So what happens? You go there. Maybe you're the first person, you get your money. When you're the 10,000th person, they say, no, the bank is closed. We are not giving more money. So what happens? Another 100,000 people show up to try and get their money out of the ATM. That's what's called a run. And that's exactly what is happening now. So, I mean, like most people, their cars have never seen a full tank. Let's just say that. All of a sudden, their cars are full. They even brought jerry cans
To store extra.
Yes. I mean, like you saw that. You've seen the pictures.
Yep.
People are queuing up with jerry cans. So now, what will happen? I'm a station owner. I have my tanks filled for what I need for the week. All of a sudden, what I needed for the week, I'm selling in 6 hours. Yeah. So the truck has to go somewhere, collect that fuel, bring it back, and discharge into that tank. So, in fact, even just yesterday, we usually don't do deliveries on Sunday. We had to get people like KRA to come back to the depots to clear the fuel so that it can be loaded. It's not something that usually happens. So we are in an unusual situation where it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's a shortage, so we then rush, and then we create more of a shortage. But let me make a prediction. All of us will fill our cars by Wednesday. We'll fill our jerry cans, drums, whatever we have at home. On Thursday, the petrol stations will be there. There'll be no queues. Fuel will be there. But for the next 1 week, because all of our cars are full, there'll be nobody at the petrol station. That's my prediction.
So there'll be stability come around Thursday.
Yeah, because we'll have all filled our cars.
We'll all be okay.
Yeah.
You said that this is a run, and you explained something spooks people and causes the run. In this particular instance, what has spooked people?
I'll tell you what spooked people. There was something in social media that was saying, "Oh, we can't afford fuel. We are not going to have fuel in our stations from the independent marketers." Yeah. So what has happened is companies like Shell, Ola, and Total have had to pick up the slack. Yeah. So they're just 60% of the market. So everyone is rushing to those stations to fill up. Yeah.
So is there no truth in the fact? Or is there no truth in the idea or that first catalyst statement that the independents were in that bit of a spot? Are you saying there's no truth to that and it was just a rumor?
Well, look, it's their perception, because it's about perception. Yeah, they feel they want to force the government to do something. For example, increase their margins, which is it's within their rights. They're in business, and then they create that panic. Okay. If you go to the coast today, go to the port, call the port, call KPA. How many ships are waiting outside to discharge? KPC have already issued a statement. There's plenty of fuel.
Okay.
There is no reason to panic. If we all live the way we normally live, I don't think there'll be any issue.
I hear you, what you're saying on this, PS Kamau. I hear you, and I understand that position. However, I don't think we can run away with or run away from what is the perception out there. And of course, perception is fueled by very many things. However, one thing that has come out very clearly from oil marketers is that they're not receiving that money. So even if they're not receiving that money that would have come from that little margin that would have come from the levy, which we all pay when we purchase fuel anyway, right? So the question is fundamentally here, even if there's fuel at the port, and these folks are not able to purchase it because they're not receiving the money that they get on top of what they've sold to be able to purchase. That's why you have fuel then waiting to be bought. It cannot be bought because these folks don't have this money. And then that creates the shortage at the pump. Is there any sense in that?
So, like I said, and I've said this during the whole week, I feel the pain of the small players. Yeah, because this is an issue of the small players. And that's why I'm saying the larger players have relationship with their banks. They're able to receive money from their banks, borrow, and continue to purchase. The smaller players are in other businesses. I own, let's say, for example, 3 petrol stations, but I also have flats. I have other non-liquid assets that are there. So when the price of fuel goes up, for example, and it's not even just about the subsidy, because the subsidy is always a month late, always. Because we have to do the analysis. Who is owed what? So it's always a month late. It's nothing new. We've been paying out the subsidy since April last year. Yeah. So it's not new. Yeah. Now, what is different? What is different is that fuel prices for import have gone up from arguably 90 shillings per litre to 170 shillings per litre. What I used to buy one truck for is now 50-60% more.
Right.
If I haven't kept the money aside, prudent financial management, cash flow management, of course I'm going to get in trouble. So I'll only be able to buy 60% of the fuel that I was buying back then. Yeah? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
So the subsidy itself is like, for example, has been pretty much constant at around 15 shillings, 10 shillings per litre. But the price of fuel has gone up more than that. It has gone up maybe 50 shillings. So as a percentage, it's actually much smaller than what is being envisioned. So
the percentage is lower, but are these folks being paid?
They are being paid.
Okay.
Yeah. And up to today, I can tell you they've been paid something like 35 billion up to now. Yeah. For the last 1 year. Because don't forget, people keep saying the price of fuel in Kenya keeps going up every month. The price of fuel in Kenya has only been changed 3 times in 1 year since April last year. 3 times. It went up twice and it went down once. There has been only 3 changes. So again, like you say, it's perception. What is the reality is different. Yeah? As they say, if you took a ground, they're different.
Okay.
Explain this, Bono PS, from the very beginning. So we have a tightly regulated petroleum sector in the country.
Yes.
Where all marketing companies participate in the open tender system. They choose the tender system chooses who is going to supply bulk of the industry's needs.
Yes.
And this is predetermined a month in advance or 2 months in advance. So all that is coming at a specific price. So if there's price fluctuation after the tender has been given out, it does not affect that supply. Is that not true?
That's not true.
Okay. What is...
So nobody buys fuel fixed price because you just don't know what's going to happen. Now, if you, for example, are a seller of fuel, so you sold at a fixed price.
Yes.
In March or the beginning of March, end of February. And the Ukraine crisis comes and now the price is much higher.
Yeah.
That is what's called price risk. So what people do, there's a publication called Platts. which is an independent publication. It tells you what the prices were sold on that day.
Yeah.
So the way the tender works is that it is the Platts price plus a premium. So what people are competing on is the premium.
The premium.
Is the premium. So the Platts price is one thing, but in the Platts price, there's also freight.
Yep.
And also freights have gone up. Yeah, if you talk to people who are doing fertilizer, maize, whatever other commodities, freight prices
Shipping
have gone
costs have gone up.
Yeah, they have gone up. So we are always have the price risk. And that's why EPRA every month looks at the cargoes that were delivered between the 9th of the previous month to the 10th of this month. The average price of the Platts oil quotations plus the various distribution taxes, margins, and then that's how you work out the pump price.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by the time they're working out a pump price and saying, EPRA, this is on the 14th, from the 15th to the next 14th,
Yes.
this is going to be the price.
Yes.
The importing and the oil marketing companies are basically bound by that.
Yes.
So what happens when international prices spike in the middle of that month? Are you saying that they bear the burden?
No, what happens then is that cargo has not been delivered yet, because whatever has been delivered has been priced out.
Okay.
So that's now the price that they're selling. So they will then get compensated in the following month. Yeah, and that's why we do it on a monthly basis, so that you only have the average of that month and then the average of the next month like that.
So what I'm trying to get at here is
Yeah.
to understand, when you say that EPRA, for example, told us on the 14th, the 15th,
Yes.
the price of super petrol will just go up by a margin of 5.
Yes.
But then the rest will be cushioned by
Yes.
the levy fund.
Yes.
What has happened between then and now that you would say international prices have shot up, therefore it's affecting the capacity of independents to buy petrol?
So what happens is this. Kenya is a very unique country in the region, in that if you're a marketer, it doesn't matter how big or how small you are. We have a level playing field. Whether you're buying 1 million liters or 50 million liters, we say everyone must pay the same price. So everyone pays the same price, and you do not open a letter of credit, and you do not pay until your ship arrives.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that is a huge bonus for smaller companies, because if you're a small company, then you have to open a letter of credit. And in Kenya, letters of credit are cash covered, or you must have security.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they then get that additional benefit. But they still have to pay for it. Yeah. It's not you sell first, then you pay. No, it arrives at the port, you pay your
pay.
taxes, and
Yeah.
you pay the fuel. So even though EPRA has given them a price, don't forget they only receive benefit as they sell the product in the pump, which is on a liter by liter basis. But they've imported a ship or part of a ship.
Yep.
So they pay that upfront and they recoup their costs.
As they sell.
Exactly. And that's why it's petrol station business. Anybody who has been in a petrol station business will tell you cash management is key in this thing. I know many people who have left their stations to their relatives, and because it's a cash business, they lend themselves money, and
Right.
and after a while they just don't have enough money to buy a truck of fuel for their station, so they go bankrupt. This is the reality of business. Now, you asked a question. So what happens if the price changes? I'll give you an example. So now the major oil companies, because they're the ones taking the burden, have had now to eat into their March cargoes, next month's pricing, which is higher.
Okay.
Yeah. So they are obviously making a loss somewhere. But they understand that in business, you'll have some losses and you'll have some wins. So it's in life, you're going to go to some weddings and you're going to go to some funerals. That's generally how life is.
Yeah.
But because they understand this and they have the financial capability to weather the storm, they will then benefit in the following pricing cycle in May, when EPRA are calculating the prices. They will then be using April cargoes.
So there's a compensatory element.
Exactly, at a higher March cargo price.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
So yes, you may make losses in this month, but you will make a profit in the following month. Generally, you need to be in this business for the long haul,
Yeah.
not just It's something I'm doing while I'm building flats. Yeah.
So if this hiccup that we have seen,
Yes.
where we are currently, because we're still looking at that problem
Absolutely.
even today,
Yes.
if this hiccup that we are currently in has not been ironed out, what is the element then that you are able to use to predict, to say that by Wednesday we will not be having this issue?
Like Kenya Pipeline told you, they have 90 million liters of fuel in the country. 90 million. Each car, let's say there are 2 million cars in Kenya. It's about the population of cars in Kenya. 2 million, 60 liters per car. By the time they finish 90 million liters, it'll be a long time. So the way I'm calculating and the pace at which we are consuming the fuel, by Wednesday we'll have filled every receptacle in Kenya with fuel.
I want to ask this question directly.
Yes.
Is this fuel subsidy a contributing factor to what we are seeing today?
Not at all.
Zero.
It depends who you're talking to. If you're talking to the like I told you, the smaller players,
Yep.
of course they have cash flow issues. And they would like us to defray some of those cash flow issues through the subsidy. Yeah, but it is not the full story. Because I'll give you an example.
Are they owed?
Yeah, they're owed.
They're owed some money.
They're owed some money. Now, say, for example, Eric, we pay them today, and we will pay them today. Yeah. They still have to contend with a higher import oil price than they are currently experiencing. They still have to buy those cargoes that are in the high seas. They still have to pay their taxes up front. It doesn't address the full issue. I think maybe the issue that we need to address is, how do I manage my business? That is the most important thing.
And are we saying that across board? Because I think this now is the third time that you've mentioned this, PS, is that, it's a cash management issue, and
Yes.
people who work in the business then have to deal with the element of cash management. Can we then say across board? Because we're looking at a countrywide issue. This is not Nairobi or dormitory towns of Nairobi. We're talking about countrywide. Are we saying that it's a cash management issue for every operator who has dealt with this shortage?
Absolutely. You see, the thing is, there's nothing unusual. There's nothing special about whether you are in Bungoma or whether you are in Nairobi or whether you are in Turkana. There's nothing different about it. You have to still buy your fuel wherever you are. Now, this is the difference. Why Nairobi is not experiencing that much of a problem is because there is a higher concentration of larger oil company stations in Nairobi.
Yeah.
How did that happen? I mean, what is the accident that created this? If you remember 20 years ago, we had a whole issue about, or maybe you guys are young guys, maybe you can't remember.
We can remember 20 years ago.
Come
yes.
So 20 years ago, there was a whole issue about people saying they're destining their cargoes for Uganda,
Yep.
and they never get there. And they get dumped in the petrol stations because of the duty differential. So a lot of major oil companies said, you know what, it's not worth our while to invest in this kind of business when product is being dumped in our stations. So they exited. They exited Western Kenya. And that is the legacy that you are seeing there today. So there's a larger concentration of smaller private oil companies in Western Kenya than they are in the urban areas of Mombasa, Nairobi, Eldoret. But once you pass there, then you begin to see the differentials. Yeah, and you can do your own analysis and see this is actually the case. And in fact, if you saw how this whole thing started, it started from Eldoret going west.
Yeah.
That's how this thing started.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is exactly the reason why. So the evidence bears itself out as to what is really going on.
But then there's something else. I mean, all those reforms that are brought in by the Ministry of Energy, later the Ministry of Petroleum, the government, from Kibaki administration to today, like you're saying, has leveled the playing field, that everybody is then playing at the same level, has encouraged investment by the small players. So we don't just have the big multinationals who are controlling the market. We've got independent Kenyan companies that are being set up to run in the petroleum sector. So those are positives.
Yes.
Now, those positives, the gains that have been made in the last 20 years are basically just being exposed bare just like that by one move. Is that not a bad thing for all the reforms that have taken place in the sector?
Let me give you, we don't live in an island. Huh? Let me tell you what's happened, for example, in the UK. So in the UK, because of all the crises of what's happening with the extremely quick economic recovery from COVID and the Ukraine issue, the gas prices have spiked. Natural gas prices have spiked. So the government went and said, okay, we are removing price caps, because what would happen is that for heating and for cooking in the UK, you had a price cap because prices had been stable for a long time. So the government said, we are removing price cap, so you as the consumer are no longer protected from increase of prices.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened? 60% of gas suppliers went out of business. Many people saw their fuel bills go up 60-70% overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is nobody who can predict everything that's going to happen in the world. What we do a best endeavor basis to find out what could possibly go wrong, and we address that. And anyway, the legal notices that are out there that control the way the oil works are not stagnant. They are constantly being addressed. Like now, we've just redone the open tender system to cater for some of the abuses that we saw that were there in the last OTS system. And we will continue. And I know EPRA are currently doing an audit since yesterday on who has been hoarding fuel. Yeah, because really, there could be an element of hoarding. Yeah, because if you think that, well, I can hold on to my fuel and maybe the government will increase the price on the 14th of April, let me hold on to it.
And make
some
more
more money later. Yeah, so EPRA will be doing that, and you saw they had a very strongly worded press release. We will be revoking licenses if that is the case. Yeah, because we cannot have this kind of behavior that is ongoing. Yes, we understand the financial pain, but like I said, you cannot just be only selling when you're making money, and when you're making more money than you should, you don't give that money back to Mwananchi. No, you do not.
Let's take a break at this point. It is 8:30, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the studio with us is the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining, Andrew Kamau. We are talking about the fuel outages or stockouts in various petrol stations around the country. And he's explaining to us, the whole thing has been said. It's about the subsidy. The government has not paid subsidy. The government owes the oil marketing companies. He says, yes, but this is not the reason why there's a shortage. And he's explaining why. Let's continue this conversation after the break so we can understand. So what is the government doing? Because today there are people who need to travel and they cannot travel just because they don't have access to fuel. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room.
Our guest is the Principal Secretary for Petroleum and Mining, Andrew Kamau. We are talking about the issue at the pump. What are the causes and what are the mitigation measures that the government is putting? So, but appears you've explained to us a number of things, and you've said several factors are contributing to what we are seeing. Number one, the independent and the small petroleum dealers in the country not being able to access fuel because cash flow. Number two, the rise in the global oil prices, which is also now then affecting what is being consumed in the country. You'll explain that in greater detail in a short while. But also, there's the issue of the subsidies and the fact that, yes, you've been paying subsidies a couple of days down the road and not upfront. And this could also be affecting the cash flow of the oil marketing companies. So, how exactly have you been paying the subsidies in the last 1 year? How much do you owe the oil marketing companies as we speak today?
So we owe them today 13 billion, thereabouts. I'm not sure of the exact number, but it's in the range of 13 to 15 billion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 13 to 15 billion, that's a lot of money for an industry. In some industries, that would collapse an industry.
Not really, because if you imagine that the price of fuel is 134 shillings per litre and the subsidy is around 12, 15 shillings.
Yep.
So it's 10%.
Okay.
So the actual monthly turnover of imported fuel in Kenya is in the range of 10 times that, 130 billion.
But this 12 shillings is the margin that the oil marketing company will make.
Exactly.
This is their profit.
Exactly.
So, and that they are still paying taxes upfront.
Exactly.
They still have to do all those things.
Yes.
So basically what we're saying is the government is holding back onto the profit that I should have made until some point down the road.
And that's why I told you that it's unfortunate and I feel their pain. But I think the government's first priority is to the Kenyans, is to us who are, distribution costs and all the rest of the thing. And this is the other thing that I said, that you have to have proper banking facilities. And like I told you, it's about cash management. Yeah. Yes, it's your entire margin, but the smaller players, it's unfortunate for them, but because they don't have those banking relationships. So we're meeting with them on Wednesday. To sit down with them and say, look, how can we help you? Who do we need to speak to? Who are your banking relationship people? Can they, against the subsidy delay, can they give you some kind of line? So this is the things that we can do as the government. We can speak to some banks about it.
Can I ask, why should there be a delay?
Okay. So why is there a delay?
Why is there a delay in the first place?
So what happens? The way it works is this. So on the 14th, the price changes. And depending on whether it's going to go up for the full whack, like Eric said, it went up 5 shillings and the balance was then kept for the subsidy. EPRA then do a calibration of, they do the calculation. This is who is owed how much, depending on what they imported. Yeah. Now, those numbers have to be verified with KRA. Is it true that Eric imported 10 million liters? Is it true that Shell imported 20 million liters? Once that calculation is done, we then present it to the National Treasury, who then agree, okay, yeah, we think the numbers stack up. Because don't forget, when you're in private sector, you have, if you make a mistake and you pay the wrong person, you get fired. I'm the accounting officer. If I pay the wrong person, I go to jail.
Yep.
It's a very different thing. It's between, how they say, what is the difference between a pig and a chicken laying eggs? Yeah, one is total commitment and the other one is a donation. Yeah. So this is the situation that we're in. So we have to be very careful on how we deal with public funds.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is why there is always a delay. There is at least a 1 month delay every single time because of the process that needs to happen.
And this is for verification purposes, like you're explaining.
Exactly. And the way the process works, EPRA have to always give us their numbers. They have to make sure that their numbers stack up. And generally, that's how it is.
So why haven't we seen, if we're looking at this as a normal process, right? This happens all the
Good
time.
question.
So why is it at this time that we are seeing this hiccup, if this is normal?
Okay, I'll tell you why. The subsidy part doesn't change that much. It's always about 12 shillings, 10 shillings, sometimes 3 shillings, depending on where the oil prices have been. So let's look at where the oil prices have come since April. $70 a barrel. What were they in this month? $130 a barrel. Yeah. So I have to take out money to buy. I had money for $70 a barrel.
Okay.
Now I have to come up with money for $130 a barrel. That's a huge increase.
$60.
Yeah, and you see, the thing is, you're not buying on replacement costs. Do you know what I mean? Because you just don't know what the price will be next month. It's just generally how. And in Kenya, we don't employ hedging or price risk management tools. So you will get the price that you will get
when you get it.
When
the
you
market.
get it. Yeah. Exactly. So you have to plan yourself. How much money am I going to put aside? But the great thing is, the prices have been pretty stable for the last 3-4 years, other than during COVID. Yeah, before COVID, the prices were pretty much around $60 per barrel for 5 years. So you knew it was predictable. Your cash flows were predictable. You knew how much money you needed to put aside, how much your profit would be, your real profit would be. Now, with the rapid increase in fuel prices escalating every single day, you just don't know how much you will need next month. But you still have outlets. You still have 5 stations. You still have 3 stations, which will require fuel every single month. So you have to then dig deep in your pocket. Either get bank borrowings or put aside some reserves, cash reserves. And unfortunately, we are where we are, where prices have escalated in the last 6 weeks from $100 or $90 a barrel to $130 a barrel. That's a 40% increase. I don't care which business you're in. Even if you were selling mangoes or potatoes and the price went up 40% and you had to come up with that cash, you would still struggle. So it's not this is the difference that has happened between April last year, where the subsidies continued, and now in January this year. Yeah.
Is this the situation which is then leading to those who've been opposed to the government controls in the petroleum sector to actually stand back and say, see what we told you? Saying, look, the open tender system and the price regulations are not good for this kind of economy. Would you say that this is an opportunity that is actually exposing the weaknesses of this system?
No, in fact, this is the reason why it is a good system. Because you imagine, like what's happening in South Africa. There's price control, but there is no subsidy. What is the price of fuel in South Africa today? It's 178 shillings per litre. What is the price of fuel in Uganda today? It's 160 shillings per litre. We are 134. They are at 160. They have no price control there. There's nothing, if you look at it, from the time, like I told you, from January, the price has gone up from $90 a barrel to $130 a barrel. We would be paying in this country, without price control, at least 170, 180 shillings per litre. This is the reality. Yeah. I don't know if we get it. And the thing is, you have to understand another issue is this. We started to collect this levy in June 2020. Yeah.
Started applying it
in June. And started applying it in April 2021. So you were paying 5 shillings, but now the benefit you're getting is 15 shillings, 12 shillings. That's the benefit you're getting as the Kenyan motorist. Yes, you've been paying 5 all this time. Now it's coming back to you as that's what insurance is about. Yeah. And we could have done a better deal, but because we understand the politics in Kenya, by the time we had set up, for example, if we had set up an option process, a proper price risk management tool, it would have cost this country arguably, because we did the calculation, 70 million shillings per day just to hedge diesel.
Okay.
When we started this process, don't forget, crude was at what, $30 per barrel? Yeah. Did we know it would get to $70?
To 70.
And if it had not got to $70 during the life of that option, which was 18 months, all of you would have said, hawa watu wa Petroleum wamekula hiyo pesa.
Of course.
Yeah. Exactly. But nobody ever says that about insurance or health insurance. But we all try and get it. That's why we have NHIF.
Sure.
Yeah.
But as you speak about insurance, then I'm led to ask then, knowing very well the volatility of this sector, that it could be one thing today and it could be another thing next month, then are there things put in place to kind of cushion what you wouldn't know would happen, which is what insurance does exactly. That you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. So as government, are there controls that are put in place? Are there insurances that are put in place so that when it's $70 today and $130 tomorrow, whereas so we don't have to have this situation whereby people are uncomfortable and there's a hiccup in the country to say, okay, guys, this is something that we can set aside as a just in case. Do things like that exist?
Oh, yes. Price risk management tools, they exist.
Are they used and applied in Kenya?
No, they're not.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Imagine, so for example, in Kenya there are, 390 members of parliament. Do you remember when we put the 5 shillings?
Those are many.
There's something like that. Yeah. Do you remember when we put the 5 shillings?
Yep.
Everybody was on radio, they were on TV, the government, what's happening. And that was an internal hedge. And the reason we put the internal hedge is because it was easier to explain an internal hedge than to try and explain an option, a price risk management tool where you go out and buy the underlying fuel hedge. And that's what I'm saying. If you have to understand where you live and the politics of the country that you're in, it would have been extremely difficult if the COVID situation continued to prevail in the world and the prices remained at a low level. And yet we had paid this insurance premium. And I told you the insurance premium was going to cost this country something like 70 million shillings per day. Yeah. But if the prices went up, we would then reap the benefits of an insurance program. But if they didn't, it would have been a whole other story. Because don't forget, we live in a very transparent country. We have a free press. We have government accounts are audited every single year. It would have come out. You'd have been asking, where did this, whatever it was, 24 billion go to? Or 48 billion in a year? Where did it go to?
If we look at the total amount of money that I spend at the pump per litre, and I'm just looking at the latest one by IPRA. So I'm paying 134 shillings and 72 cents for a litre of super petrol.
Yes.
At a fuel station.
Yes.
The landed cost of that product is 78 bob and 14 cents.
Yes.
And this includes everything.
Yeah.
Purchase price, freight, insurance, everything. And then between 78 and 134 is some 59 shillings and 71 cents. That is taxes and levies.
And margin.
Yeah. This is a lot of money.
Yes.
Why is the government taking up so much money? Because, look, let's look at the levies. Just taking them through. Excise duty for a litre of super petrol, 21 shillings and 95 cents. Road maintenance levy, 18 bob. Petroleum development levy, and this is one that we use for the subsidy, right? It's 5 shillings and 40 cents. We have petroleum regulatory levy, 25 cents. Railway development levy, 1 shilling and 49 cents. Merchant shipping levy, 3 cents. 2 shillings and 61 cents for import declaration fee. And then there's VAT at 9 shillings and 98. This is a lot of money, Bono PS. Is there nothing that the government can forego here in terms of income and to make it easier for the consumer?
Okay, Eric. Government finances the exchequer in two ways: taxation or borrowing. This is like the English say, it's like being between the devil and the deep blue sea.
Yes.
Now, we know from everything we read in the press, we hear on TV, Kenyans just don't want borrowing. Oh, we borrowed, we are,
Yes.
But we also don't want to pay tax. Of course, by the way, we must also have good roads. We must have SGR.
Yeah.
We must have free primary school education.
Yes.
We want all those things. We all run households. Yeah?
Yes.
We all run households. There are certain things that you can't tell your kids, Eric, this time, you relax at home.
Don't go to school.
Don't go to school. Hakuna pesa. You have to, as a parent, you have to figure out how you are going to fund that.
Yeah.
And this is one way that we can fund it. And by the way, Kenya is not unusual as a country in taxing fuel. It's a worldwide practice. Yeah. Because are you going to tax bread?
Well, that's what you're doing indirectly, yeah.
No, indirectly, yes. But at the end of the day, how many people in Kenya pay income tax?
Not many.
There you go.
Yeah.
So those of us like you, like who do pay income tax, the 6% or the 7% of Kenyans who pay income tax, to alleviate your burden, there has to be a tax somewhere else. And that's why things like VAT are very popular. And that's why fuel levies are very popular. That's why tax on alcohol, cigarettes, and all these things are very popular with governments. You have to figure out one way or the other. Now, of course, you can write to your local MP and say, that tarmac road that you are promising us, we don't need it. Just go and talk to when the budget comes, tell them to reduce the price of. Do you think it's going to happen?
No, but PS, is it justified really to have 60 shillings as taxes and levies when
From
landed
134?
cost is 78 bob? 78 shillings is landed cost. Add another 60 bob as taxes and levies. Is that really justified? Is 60 bob a justified figure?
The money has to be found somewhere else then. It's a balancing act. And that's why I keep telling people, governing is a very difficult, job. I was telling a friend of mine the other day that there are two jobs you don't want anywhere. The president of the country and the coach of the national football team. Because as far as everyone is concerned, they can do the job better than you. Yeah. Everyone is always second guessing. It's like having a company with 300 directors on your board. Everyone has an opinion on how the company should be run. But I always say, if there was another way to do it, believe me, we would have found it.
Whose interests lie at the heart of operations when it comes to this?
In terms of?
In terms of the taxes that are applied, in terms of the services that you're saying come as a result of that high tax, right? Whose interests lie at the center of all of this?
Mwananchi. Mwananchi. Yeah.
Because when you say Mwananchi, and this is the conversation that we keep having here, if we say it's Mwananchi, when Mwananchi is paying 60 bob per litre of petrol at the pump, or let me just look at diesel because we still have to talk about diesel, or 41 bob for a litre of diesel, this is passed on. If it's a transport sector, they pass it on to the consumer. If it's a manufacturer, they pass it on to the consumer. If it's the Ubers and the boda, they pass it on to the consumer. So how are you taking care of the Mwananchi if you're making it expensive for the Mwananchi to actually have ease of transport?
Okay, so you have a reduced tax. So you don't have the good roads that you have. So what happens as the Mwananchi, on my way here, I hit maybe 30 potholes. Whatever money I was paying in that 60 shillings, now I have to buy new shock absorbers, I have to buy new tires, I have to buy wear and tear on my vehicle. There's no getting around this thing, my friends. Yeah.
But is it clearly evident, translatable, that we say this 60 shillings that you're paying on top of the 78, can we go back clearly and say that here was all this bucket where all this money went in? And then you can see the clear lines, projects through which these monies went to pay. Because you had said something earlier that Kenyans don't want to pay tax. And I actually do feel that Kenyans wouldn't have a problem paying tax if there's a relatable action to what that money that they had spent goes to.
I'll give you
that they can see very clearly, that they don't have to complain tomorrow about 1, 2, 3, if they can see where the money is going.
You know, I'm old enough to remember when our roads were completely potholed. We drove on the little slivers of road that were there that didn't have a pothole. In fact, it was interesting that the only people who drive straight in Kenya are people who are drunk. Unlike other places where drunks are the ones who are weaving because they don't see the potholes. Normal people would weave through the potholes. I'm old enough to remember that. I'm old enough to remember where it took you 14 hours to come from Nairobi to Mombasa on the train. Yeah. There are so many things when there was no free education. I remember those days. Yeah. If you drive around Kenya, please, and I ask you to drive around Kenya and see for yourself the level of development that has been there in terms of building of infrastructure. If that was not the case, and unfortunately for us, as Kenyans, let me tell you one thing I really like about us. We always want more. We always want better, which is a good thing. We are not satisfied with what we have. And that's why our country is where it is. But there is a direct correlation with, if you look at it like this, money goes to the exchequer. Every year, the budget is read. But what is the budget making process? It goes to Parliament. Parliament look at it, they interrogate it, we go through public participation, we then pass the budget. The government raises the money through taxation or borrowing. They spend the money on projects. At the end of the year, the Office of the Auditor General comes and audits the projects. They say, you said you are going to do A, B, C. Did you do it?
Yes.
Yes or no? If it's no, you're flagged. You then go to the Public Accounts Committee if you're a ministry, or you go to the Public Investment Committee if you're a parastatal.
Mm-hmm.
And you explain what happened. This is the money that you had been given in trust. What did you do with it? You know?
Yep.
And this is the part that I feel, maybe as government, we're not doing a good job in telling people all the good things that have taken place. Yeah? Because if I live only in Moranga, I don't know what's going on in Mombasa. Yeah? If I live in Mombasa, I don't know what's going on in Kapenguria.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been to these places. I'm amazed. I never went to Kapenguria before I joined the government. But the roads are amazing. You know, there are airports being built. Like, for example, Kitale Airport is being redone. You know, for those of you who go there, it's amazing. I'm always amazed.
There's development taking place.
Yes, in this country.
And is it directly from the taxes that Kenyans are paying, I think is the question.
So, like I said, there are two ways to receive the money, either through taxation or through borrowing.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it important to ring fence this petroleum development levy so that it's only used as a subsidy?
That's what it's currently being used for.
Is it important to ring fence it?
It's important.
So that it's only used, you only dip your hand to finance the subsidy.
It is important.
Why is it not done?
But it's the case. The only part that is not being used is the 40 cents, which was there from before. But actually, all the money is going towards a subsidy.
Every time.
Every time.
Because this was a question in Parliament the other day. Like, where was the money? And the CS Treasury, plus yourself, you had back and forth on where the money was.
Look, it's in what happens is, it's there, the Levy Act. If you go to the Levy Act, because it is governed by an act.
Mm-hmm.
Have a look at it. There is no other way to use that money unless the Cabinet Secretary for Petroleum deems it otherwise. But it's there only for the levy.
Okay.
Yes. Only for the subsidy.
Final words in 30 seconds, Bona PS.
Yeah.
People who are today going to be driving from one petrol station to another or walking around in jerrycans, what would you like to tell them?
If you do not need the fuel today, there is no need to do rush buying. That's the first thing. If you usually buy 1,000 shillings, buy 1,000 shillings. If you buy full tank, then you can buy full tank. Continue with your normal pattern of purchase. This issue will be resolved, like I said, by Wednesday, Thursday. And I'm always happy to come back.
Please.
Yeah.
We'll actually invite you back next week and tell you, you said Thursday, we are in Tuesday. Andrew Kamau, Principal Secretary for Petroleum and Mining, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you.